Welcome to GleamU International. I am Professor Linton, and today I'd like to talk to you about computing the present value lump sum. Now, the formula for present value lump sum is present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus r, which is rate, raised to the power of n, which represents the number of compounding periods or the time horizon of the investment. So present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus r raised to the power of n. Other textbooks might have present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus I raised to the power of t. It's the same thing, okay? All right. So let's consider an example. How much must you invest today to have $3,000 in 2 years, assuming an annual rate of 5%? So we're going to restate the problem, and now we're going to actually create a timeline as well while we're reading through the problem again. So how much must you invest today? So I underlined that phrase because I wanted to point out to you that this phrase is actually telling us what we need to do. It says, how much must you invest today? That tells us that we don't know today's value. Today's value is unknown. So it is asking us to compute today's value. So it's literally saying, what is the present value? So I start to create my timeline, and I show today at time 0, and I show that we don't know the value today. We don't know the present value. So that's what we're going to compute. What is the present value? Let me continue. So it says, how much must you invest today to have $3,000 in 2 years? So now this is also rich with information because it tells us that 2 years out, we will have $3,000. So this tells us that the future value, that is in 2 years, we know it, and that it is $3,000. Assume an annual rate of 5%. So I'm just going to post that right here, that the annual rate is 5%. The annual rate is 5%. So now we're going to solve the problem, but I'm going to summarize the problem another way. I'm going to summarize it in chart form, okay? So here it is, and this is going to be so easy to do because we actually had done a summary on the timeline. So that's the same information that we're just going to plug in right here. The first thing is our future value. The future value is $3,000. We showed that on the timeline. The rate is 5%, and N is 2 years. And so we've done our problem summary. Isn't that great? So now the next thing we need to do is solve the problem. So we need to state the formula that we need to use to solve the problem. In this case, it's very clear that we need to solve for present value. And so we state that present value is equal to future value divided by 1 plus r raised to the power of n. Then we're going to populate our model with number information from our problem summary. So right where we saw future value, we are going to put 3,000, right? So see that right there? The problem summary tells us that the future value is 3,000, so that's what we put in. The next thing we need to take care of is the denominator, where we have 1 plus r. Now, r is the rate, and our summary tells us that the rate is 5%. 5% in decimal form is 0.05. Okay, and so I just wanted to do something to make this easier for you next time you have to do this. What if the rate was, say, 4%? Then that would be 0.04. And what if the rate was 7%? That would be 0.07. And just one more. What if the rate was 9%? It would be 0.09. You see that? And so in our case, the rate is 5%, which is in decimal form is 0.05. So 1 plus the 5% rate is 1 plus 0.05, which is 1.05. We're going to raise that to the power of n, and the problem summary tells us that n is 2. So our exponent expression is 2. So now simply we need to find out what 1.05 squared is equal to. That's the first thing we will do. Okay, and so we find that that number 1.05 squared is equal to 1.1025. There it is right there, 1.1025. So to solve, we simply say 3,000 divided by 1.1025, and we end up with an answer of $2,721.09. Now, the other thing we could do is we could solve by using the financial calculator. And we're going to be using the Texas Instrument financial calculator to show you how to solve this problem. You're welcomed to use whichever other financial calculator you do have. Okay, so let me show you now with this one. So we're going to mainly be using this line right here with these function buttons N, I/Y, PV, PMT, and FV. So N is the number of compounding periods or the time information. I/Y is our rate information. PV is the present value. PMT is payment. And FV is future value. Okay, we'll also be using the CPT button. So if you look at the top left hand corner, you'll see the CPT button. But don't worry, I'll show it to you when we're doing the computation. Okay, so here goes. The first thing we need to put in is our time information. Well, the problem summary tells us that that is equal to 2. So in the financial calculator, you press 2 and then you press N. Then we're going to put in our rate information. Remember, our rate is 5%. Now, the financial calculator doesn't want decimal form. It doesn't want 0.05. And it doesn't want you to type 5 and then the percent sign. It just wants you to put 5 for 5%. If the rate was 7%, they would just want you to put 7. Do you get that? So we just want 5, so put 5 and then press I/Y button. Then type in 3,000 for our future value. Type in 3,000 and then press the FV button. So we have our time information in, our rate information in, we have our future value information in. The next thing is payment. So there are no series of payments taking place. So we could do one of two things. You could put 0 and then press the payment button. Now, I wanted to point out that if you're doing a good job of clearing your financial calculator before each computation, then you could even skip the payment button altogether. Okay, but in our case, we put 0 and then hit payment button. All right, then press compute, press CPT. It's up here. Let me show you. Right there, you see that green light flashing on the calculator screen over there on the left, the CPT button. So press CPT, which is we're asking the financial calculator to compute, and then press PV, present value. So we're asking the financial calculator to compute present value. So that's why we press CPT and then PV to get our answer. And so we'll see that the answer output is $2,721.09. Now, take note that the financial calculator will show PV as negative. So in our case, negative $2,721.09, since the initial investment is a cash outflow. And this is the present value. So it's the initial outflow, right? So it's negative. All right, so we computed the present value by using the formula, the present value lump sum, by using the formula, and we computed the present value lump sum by using the financial calculator. Now, I always tell my students that they need to understand what they just computed. So you need to at least state the meaning of your answer, right? So in this case, you could say something simple like this. You could phrase it another way, but something along these lines. You will need to deposit $2,721.09 today at an annual rate of 5% to have $3,000 in 2 years. Okay, so that's our answer. All right, so let me know. Do you need more help? Visit gleamacademy.com and click on the courses button. And there you're going to find recorded lessons on time value of money by Professor Linton. We have step by step instructions on topics including what is time value of money, future value, time value of money problems, and detailed solutions, interest on interest versus compound interest, present value, computing the rate, computing time to maturity, and computing compounding problems, right? So looking at compounding. There's also a workbook that talks about the fundamentals of time value of money, specifically in this case, present value lump sum that you're welcome to. And the workbook is simple, it's concise, contains about 4 chapters, and once again, it introduces you to time value of money, introduces you to present value. It talks about computing the rate. So we literally compute the rate together and compute the length of investment period and also practice problems. And we have answer keys with step by step solutions to help you through that process. And so visit gleamacademy.com or email c.linton@gleamacademy.com to purchase this workbook.